Today's topic is a really important one, and I want to share with you how I came up with the idea for this Finding Fit mental health and college selection. I'm really about taking the pressure off college admission for our teens. I believe it's gotten really out of control and frankly quite ridiculous. And a lot of it starts with us and achievement culture and all of that. I just don't hear a lot about mental health and college selection. Like, how do you pick a college with your teens' mental health in mind? And as a mom of a senior who is now going through this process and we're going on college visits and we're doing all of these things, this is top of mind for me as Kayla's mom when I'm going through this. And I say that not because my child is suffering from a mental illness. There's no clinical diagnosis of anything. It's not like that for my child. I know for some of yours it is. But she's about to have more independence than she's ever had, more freedom than she's ever had, be experiencing things that she's never experienced before. And I want to make sure that college cares about her, that's going to be there for her when she falls, because all students make mistakes and things happen. And so I have had that top of mind and I haven't talked about it a lot. And I started thinking about it and I went, why am I not talking about this? Why am I not bringing this up? There's no possible way I'm the only mom that's thinking about this. So that's kind of what prompted it. I don't believe that your teen needs to have a full mental health crisis for us to be thinking about this first. I think that all of us, whether we have the happiest kids in the universe or not, students who are well-adjusted, whatever else, it's a very real thing that I believe a lot of us are dealing with. And I started going down these rabbit holes of what is it like right now on these college campuses when it comes to mental health? I'm no stranger to the fact that statistics have been showing that rates of depression, clinical depression, anxiety on the rise, stress in academics, achievement culture, all that is going up. I will tell you that I've been at this for a long time. I saw the pendulum swing that way with states funding mental health and doing all of that. So I don't believe that it is new what's happening, but we do have a current mental health crisis on college campuses, and I believe it's been steadily increasing for, the past decade or more. So we have to talk about that, and we need to talk about what that in reality is looking like on the college campuses. And most important, what do we do now to kind of work for some preventive medicine to help our students now before they go? So that's really what we're going to be talking about. Part of it's the reality check of what's happening, and the other is to give you some inspiration and some guidance and some resources to help you to understand what you need to research ahead of time. I will give that sort of warning label that I'm not a mental health counselor. This is not my area of expertise, if you will. My area of expertise is the reality that I've worked with thousands of teenagers and their families for the last 27 years, and I am no stranger to pretty much every mental health crisis you can imagine. I have seen, worked with, or had siblings of my clients or whatever. I've been in it and I've seen it. I've had students go off to college and have to come home. I've had terribly tragic things happen to students. I've had deaths happen to students. I've had awful things happen. And so I'm coming at this from a place of I am a college admissions counselor, strategist, and I'm a mom. And that is really the basis that I'm going to be talking to you about what you need to look for today. It is a very large topic and I cannot cover everything. So my focus is really going to be on what you can look for and what you can do now in order to really try to support them in a preventative way before they go. That's kind of the two pieces that we're going to be talking about today. And then the next point I'm going to make are the two most pivotal things that you need to think about when you're picking colleges with your teen's mental health in mind. Number one, what does your teen need in their environment to feel a sense of connection and belonging? What activities do they need? What type of friend group do they need? Who are they going to be surrounding themselves with? What are they going to be active in order to feel like they have a sense of belonging? What will they need in order to either maintain that mental health, and it could be something with their physical health that's going to help their mental health, whatever it is that you feel is going to bring them that sense of connection and belonging. This has been top of mind for me because I feel that that is preventative medicine. Of course, even students who are connected in a group may still feel lonely, may still feel sad, may still feel anxious, may still have these worries and concerns and academic stress and all those other things. But We all know that having that safety net and people looking out for our students, people looking out for our children, people looking out for us is really one of the best ways to help to ward off some of those negative feelings and emotions that students feel when they're under pressure. They want to feel like they're all in this together. So there's so many wonderful things here. We've got other students of color, huge. It might be other first generation students, other students that are going through something with their gender identity, whatever it is, right? That's important. Close circle of friends. What kinds of friends are they looking for? What like-minded things will they have? Sports, intramurals if they're not going to swim collegiately. This piece needs to drive your college search. A sense of connection doesn't solve everything, but it certainly helps. And I think that's really, really important. We have to start somewhere. The second piece coupled with that is this. We need to work really hard in our own home to remove this stigma that therapy, medication, getting help means you're broken. We have got to work harder at that. In my view, I wish everyone had their own personal therapist in their pocket that they could talk to, that they could communicate with, that they can get a third-party view of, whatever it is. But that stigma of there's a problem if you need help, there's a problem if you're going to ask for help, that we need to start right now. So if you're the type of parent where you've seen your teens upset and you're worried about what will it look like if, that mentality is causing so much damage on these college campuses. And I'm going to address for you in a moment the reality check of what students are saying to help to underscore why this conversation early and often is really, really important. We have to start somewhere. And I feel like those two pieces before they leave your house, identifying what they need ahead of time, and this other piece of removing the stigma will help a great deal with getting your teen to a place where if they need help, they're going to ask for it. I'm going to share with you some harrowing stats, grave stats. So many admissions formula members are sending me articles to read about the mental health crisis on these campuses, but I want to just talk to you about some of the reality checks that are happening right now. So the first is that demand for services is outpacing supply. And it is constant. So we are hearing this from even the smaller, tiny liberal arts colleges all the way to the larger research universities. Everything in between, that demand is outpacing supply, meaning a lot of students are asking for services and the wait times are really, really long to be able to get into a psychiatrist or a psychologist to get help. So we're going to start just sort of laying it out, and then we're going to talk about what you need to think of ahead of time. Right now, the estimate is about 10 to 15% of college students nationwide are seeking services. So what I want you to think about is now add to that how many students aren't seeking services that are struggling and they aren't asking for help. And it's not because they don't know the services exist, and that's important. A lot of them are not asking for help because of the stigma and because they are very afraid of what will happen to their trajectory if they have to take a break. What happens if they need to rest? What happens if they're hospitalized? How will the college handle it? What will they do? Who will be notified? What would it be like when they want to return? That is well researched and documented in multiple surveys right now. A lot of students are saying, they're not saying they didn't know who to go to. They're saying that they knew where to go, but they were afraid to go because of the repercussions and stopping whatever plan they were on. I understand that a lot of their pressure is from themselves and it's induced this way, but we got to work on that. Encourage students to know that it's okay to take a break. It's okay to stop. I've been posting a lot about that on all of my pages right now about how mental health is perceived in the state. I said it over and over again because I'm driving home that point that it's really important for students to take a break. They are having a major difficulty right now retaining staff because students are burned out with all the switching and back and forth and everything happened that over the last couple of years. So are faculty and staff. They are overburdened, and the counselors themselves are also struggling with needing a break and having a hard time getting it. The latest survey by a network called Healthy Minds, the Healthy Network, has said this: a third of students, 1/3, have screened positive for clinically significant symptoms of anxiety. And get this, almost half have screened positive for depression. And this is not like feeling sad every once in a while. This is like clinical depression. That is a very alarming number. In the fall 2021, there's a big survey that goes out from the American Council of Education, and 73% of college presidents stated that student mental health was the most pressing concern right now on their campuses. And more than half stated that mental support for faculty and staff is also a concern. That's the tough stuff. That's the reality check of what's happening right now on these college campuses. So we've got a lot of things going on that are making it really, really difficult for students to go through their daily lives of what they're doing in college. What I want to start with is this. What should you look for when you're evaluating the fit of a campus and its likelihood of keeping your teen healthy? What are the things right away that you can look for? I want to start with some of the big questions that if you have a piece of paper, you should be writing some of these down. We have a generation of students that is used to living life through their phones, where the basis a lot of their connections begin with Snapchat, begin with them seeing someone on Instagram that they choose to follow, influencers. We have a whole generation of students that are used to living their social life through their phone. So the biggest question is, what does the college do to encourage authentic human connection? What are they doing? Are the faculty trained to bring out the best in their students, or are they just talking at them? What are they doing to have that back and forth human connection? That is a really, really important piece here. And the second one that I am grateful on my college tours I have been hearing a lot about, how does that college encourage relationships with professors and with mentors and with adults on that campus who are not peers, but are older, that can help them with the wise and the wonderful and giving advice? This is the preventative stuff that I think is really important. So if you have a student, we're going to talk about this in a minute, to identify what right now your student uses in order to be successful in school, I want you to think about those relationships and whether or not the colleges on your list are going to have opportunities for your teen to do that. The third piece, do students even feel that there's a value in coming to class at that college? We have a situation where some larger colleges especially are continuing to encourage a hybrid mentality, allowing people to, go to class or not go to class, and we're just going to have everyone on Zoom and it's your option. And some colleges are saying, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're bringing back attendance. This is something that our students need. This is how they learn better. That's kind of a big question, right? Like, is there even a value to getting out of bed and going to class that day, right? Because we want students to be able to have that interaction. And then the other big question is when you're thinking about the colleges on your list, and I hear this a lot where people say, well, we're going to apply to this and that, and I know they're out of our budget, but my student will be working and they'll have these other responsibilities to help to pay, or they'll have these loans or whatever. I want you to think about what the undergraduate experience will look like if your teen needs to have all those responsibilities, because I don't think we talk about that enough. So my own child will have a job in order to help pay for college. But we've talked in great detail about what those boundaries look like in terms of hours and finding the right person or the organization to work for, so they're not being like worked to death as they go through this on top of all the responsibilities. There's a study that talks about students saying that academic stress is so incredibly high, but so is the priority of making sure they have enough money for everything else. What happens is the everything else becomes a priority, because if you don't do everything else, you can't go to college. So they're trying to balance this whole thing. So that's important too in college selection, where if you've got a budget, be careful about we can go a little higher and you'll get loans, or we can get a little higher and you can work. Make sure you're having an understanding of how that might impact their mental health if they're needing to balance all of it. How would you get some of this information? Do students on that campus feel like faculty cares about them? Those are questions that you can ask. You can ask not just a tour guide, but you can ask students in clubs that you're looking at. The students can reach out to, let's say they're interested in club swimming. They can reach out to the head of the club swim program and get connected to students and ask those students, do they care about you and how do you know? You'll get some really straight answers on that. Some will say they've been lenient with assignments. This is an interesting one. I heard someone said, my professors, their deadlines are always before 5 p.m. They never do late midnight deadlines. And I was like, that is so interesting because the professor wants you to value sleep. They don't want you to have a midnight deadline. If you have a midnight deadline, they know that most of you are going to be up from 10 to midnight. What are the little nuanced ways that they care? What are they doing to really try to connect with their students outside of office hours? Those kinds of things that you're asking, I think will help you to gauge whether or not students really feel connected to other faculty. What a lot of professors are saying right now, okay, and this analogy was interesting on a recent webinar that I was on. They said that a lot of faculty and staff are saying that college students are coming to their campus and they're all turtle, no shell. And I was like, that is a great analogy. They don't have those coping mechanisms, the armor to help them for when they're kind of going through their life and something happens. They don't have those coping strategies in place with what do they do when they feel stressed? Who do they turn to? What do they need to do in order to eat healthier and sleep better and all those kinds of things? If you have a student going off to college, it's something that you would work on this summer. They're not in school at that time. But if you have younger students, when they're under pressure, when they're feeling that, what are you doing to help them identify what their triggers are? And what are you doing to help teach them about their coping? I will admit that during this whole AP testing thing, the last couple of weeks, I felt like I was doing a lot better with Kayla than I was, and afterwards we had this long conversation about it. But I should have built in for her and helped her to be like, I'm going surfing right now, Mom. Because she would do that and I would say, well, are you done with your work? And instead I should have just been like, absolutely, that sounds great, take a break. Helping them to identify what their triggers are. She was doing it because she's very self-aware, and she was doing it when she was like at that level of not being able to think anymore and not being able to think clearly, and she just needed to take a break. So encouraging those coping mechanisms for them. Someone emailed me and said, my student tends to put a lot of pressure on themselves, and we as parents are the ones that are telling him to take a break, and we're telling him to slow down, and we're telling him to turn off the light at time to go to sleep. How do we know that they're going to do that in college? Well, the hope is that the more that you do right now in your home, the more that they will replicate when they're there, because it works. They know what stress feels like, and when they get over the edge, they'll be able to kind of use those pieces. So talk and communicate with your teen before they go, and do it during the times when inevitably your students will feel more stressed, during finals week, during testing, when they have a lot of projects, when they're balancing activities. Those are times for you to like stop, slow down, and communicate about it and be really clear with them on it. So these are some other questions that I would say that you need to think about now. In what study environment do you believe that your teen will thrive when they're gone? So what is it like now? Do they work best by themselves? Do they work best with one other student? Do they work best with peace and quiet? Think about all of that. And then when you go on your visits, which most of you will do visits, look for where they're going to study and go check it out. What do those spaces look like? Another point was brought up on a different webinar that someone said colleges need to be more aware of the culture of studying and the culture of academics that they're promoting, like the culture of rigor. And they brought up an interesting question. They said, what does it say to students if a library is open 24/7? And I thought, that's interesting, because I remember in my college experience, there was one room that was open all night in the main library there. But most of the libraries closed down, I think, at midnight or something. But what an interesting question. It's like, well, wait a minute. Is that a good thing for a library to be open 24/7? Or are you encouraging students to stay up all night and cram? Another thing that they brought up is that students really need to think about, and this is not something that I hadn't thought about before, but you as parents need to think about what classroom environment do they thrive the best in? I ask this of students, and we talk about it in great length. And I say, do you learn best when you're connected to your teacher? And a lot of the students will say yes. It all depends on the teacher. What would it be like if you're in a room of 300 people and you don't feel like you're the smartest in the room, and you have to ask a question. Would you be willing to raise your hand and ask a question? Or are you okay with waiting a couple days until the office hours? Asking those things, right? Do you even participate in class? Or are you kind of an invisible student? What will that be like in school? I ask things like, where do you go for help? Do you know how to ask for help? Having all of those conversations ahead of time, and then when you go to campus, looking for that, asking students about that. The lectures like, are the professors engaging? That will help with their mental health and not make it even harder for them. Do the same with currently, what type of peer group do they thrive in? What type of living environment do they thrive in? Obviously, their living environment is going to be completely different. I have a client that one of their concerns is, I don't know if I can handle a roommate. And that's a really valid concern for this student's background. That's a really great question for that student to really hone in on, to know what he is going to need for his own mental health when he goes. So much is going to be different for this student. So mental health wise, can we look for places that have the availability of single dorms? Can that be guaranteed? We hear about advocacy a lot for students that have learning differences, but they need to learn to advocate for themselves and be good at it before they launch. Every single student needs to be good at that. And that is one of the best ways to prevent or tone down whatever mental things are going to be going on for their mental health. That is one huge way to do it, so they know who to go to and what to do for help. So talk and communicate before you go. If your student crumbles under pressure, they don't eat, they don't sleep, they overstudy, they obsess, they get 3 hours of sleep during testing week, they're doing all of these unhealthy things, please be careful, especially if they're that high-performing student, about landing at a college where that's going to continue. Just because you have a student that does really well in school doing that, great, they do fantastic in school because they study all night and they obsess over things, and they're going to do it all on their own, and they don't eat well, and they don't choose activity when they're stressed, and they get great grades. Fantastic. Is it? What's it going to be like when that student goes to college and chooses an academically highly competitive school where the environment is really competitive, not collaborative? It's not suddenly going to go away, right? So you as a parent can have those conversations to decide whether or not that type of environment is going to be good for them as they continue to go on in college. And you can say, let's look for a collaborative school that's highly selective or whatever. Look for the collaboration. Look for students working together. I'll never forget that this was decades ago. I visited Boston University, but the time when I went, it was during Dead Week, during that time where there's an academic policy in place that says no quizzes, no other tests, no homework assignment, no reading, anything. It's time for them to study for finals. That's something that you can look for, what the academic policy is around the final time. I always do this. I walk through the student center, the cafeteria, the main quads in the area. The weather wasn't terrible that day, so a lot of people were outside. I did not see any collaboration. Earbuds in, down, it wasn't earbuds at the time, headphones, and everyone just doing their own thing and studying. I did not see a lot of collaboration, as opposed to other colleges that I've been to where students are out studying together, they're in places in the library studying together, they were in groups. You can look for that collaboration. You can ask students about that. Does it feel really competitive with each other? Do students work together? So if you have a student that they stress themselves out constantly trying to get the A, you might want to look at colleges that are more collaborative. And we're going to get into now what you should look for when you're on these campuses. It's really important to look for what prevention or early intervention strategies does the college have in place before the crisis mode. Does it seem like the college has a message of wellness on campus? Meaning that when you're on these tours and when you're communicating with different students on campus, do you feel like everyone really understands that wellness is a priority? What would you look for? The first thing is, can you ask the students, like, if you are feeling down, what do you do? And hopefully they're telling you things like, my RA told me this, in orientation, I heard this. There's peer support groups on campus, and not just the tour guides, because the tour guides are going to be trained on that certain type of material to cover, because colleges know that parents are caring about this. but just asking some students that would be in that group that your teen might hang with, like, what are the opportunities that are there for me to feel better if I'm not feeling good? A lot of colleges, they're moving to like a third party type of teletherapy, which I think is fantastic because of the backup, because it's so difficult, because of students feeling the stigma of like walking into a health center. That third party teletherapy where from their dorm room, from somewhere on campus, they can hit up a counselor and it's 24/7 access and it's really easy to get. There are definitely some colleges, I think there'll be more and more doing it, but that's a question that you can ask. Who would you ask? You can absolutely, with or without your student, you can go to the CAPS Center, the Counseling and Psych Services, CAPS, a lot of places have that, to ask these questions. You can go to the Rec Center and ask these questions, which often is connected to wellness. If you have a student with a learning difference, you can go to the Disability Services Office, but I feel like you should generally ask the kids on campus like what they know about. Because the more students know, the more it's immersed in the culture of the school, that wellness is part of it. You can find out about mindfulness and yoga. And there were a couple colleges that I've recently looked at that have entire centers devoted to that. They have an entire floor on their rec center that's devoted to that. So look for the preventative types of support. Those types of early intervention strategies are going to be important. Support groups for different types of students. If you have a student, LGBTQ, have a student in that area, you need to look at the Campus Pride Index. The Campus Pride Index. And it's a tool, basically, that evaluates colleges and their inclusivity. And what I love about it is if you go through it, it asks a ton of different questions, and you can use that for when you're doing your own research on schools. Questions related to housing, specific questions related to reporting incidents of hate. Look for all of that. So that's a wonderful tool to use. The other big one is peer support. What type of peer support is on campus and how are those students trained? You can ask these questions in the selection process. And I'm going to say this loud and clear. Do not worry about it being a red flag or a mark on their application. Stop that. I think I had at least 10 people write and say, how do we look for this without it hurting my student? And I went, no. We got to get that mindset out of it. You are looking for a college that cares about your child. And if you're asking these questions and you feel that it's going to hurt them in admission, that place is not right for your student. You want a college that accepts your whole teen, all parts of them, and you want a place where your student's going to feel safe. So please don't worry about that. People have asked, well, if my student has suffered from different mental health issues, is it okay to write about it? That gets a little bit nuanced because it depends. Is that issue their whole self? Has that taken a hold of everything about their entire high school experience and it's such a piece of who they are and what they've gone through that they need to write about it? Okay, fine. My sort of litmus test that I use for students who have gone through things, and most have, is I say, are you still in the weeds of it? If the student is still in the weeds of it, meaning they start to write about it and they're having a problem, they can't quite get to the learning yet. They haven't learned yet. They're still sort of in the weeds. Then I might say, you know what? It may not be appropriate to write about it because we want to talk about what you've learned, what you've gained. Who are you now? Because that's what colleges want to know. They want to know what you've been through, but they want to know how it's changed you, how it's helped you, and how you kind of move on. The other question that I think that you should ask is this. There's a program called Cognito, and it's with a K. Okay, so Kognito, Cognito. And I'm sure there's similar ones out there, but this is the one that I've heard of a lot lately. It's a mental health simulation program to help faculty with identifying when they have students that are struggling. And it's a mandatory training now at some schools, and some they have to do like an annual re-up of it to do Cognito again. I believe it's somewhat short, but it helps them to really look for those things. And so I would ask questions like that, like how are the faculty trained to help with this? Someone had said, will faculty know if my daughter's having a panic attack? And that's like kind of where like the Disability Service Office can help you with what you can possibly talk to the faculty and kind of get that in place to find out how communicative your team can be with the professors ahead of time and all of that to kind of know. I think that faculty are often the first line of defense, right? Because they're the ones that are going to see your students hopefully 2 or 3 times a week in person. And so knowing whether or not there's training in place for the faculty and staff, I think is really important as well. So preventative intervention, and that's where you're thinking about, okay, what does my teen need to feel better, to feel good? Who are the peers that they can talk to? Like for mine, we were up at these schools in Oregon. I wanted to find out what rec centers were like top stop. I want to know that when it rains cats and dogs, that my teen can go somewhere and move their body to get everything flowing in their brain, not just for the physical to stay in shape, but so that they feel better when it's gray. So things like that. Think about what preventative medicine types of things you need in place when your teen is going to this college. I would also ask questions related to how professors handle absenteeism. And I know it's different. Some professors might be like, whatever, they're not here, others won't. But what do they do if they notice a dip in grades? What do they do if they notice no papers being turned in? What is sort of the protocol and process for absenteeism? There's a school out here, they said, we're the type of college that if you try to sleep in the morning, you know, you have an 8 a.m. class and you do it once, we're okay with it. But if you do it on multiple times, that professor is going to come find you. They're going to come to your dorm. They're going to make sure you're okay. Okay. And I've heard that as well from students themselves there. That's not a place that you can be absent from class. 2 more pieces. Now let's get into something that everyone needs to be aware of, and I feel like this is an important piece to research. I want to understand how colleges triage students in crisis. And this is important because I'm hearing things like a 1-month wait time. What a lot of colleges are doing with the extra funds that they just got from the government, and I believe there's different parameters on how this can be used, is they've hired specific counselors that are only assisting with triage. So if you get 50 students waiting, you know, that have called in the crisis care center or that are getting referrals, they are the ones that are triaging those students to decide who gets the services first. That is a reality, my friends, is that colleges, the demand is exceeding the supply. So you need to identify what that triage looks like. Are they keeping it all in-house? Most are. Or are they referring to community providers? And if they're referring to community providers, do those counselors have the bandwidth, or are they all full as well? And we know that this is also something that you need to think about. What does that team look like that's helping with the triage? And how often can therapy be provided? Someone asked about preventative counseling. Is counseling available to your student if they just want it to maintain their health? And I would say that, yes, that's pretty common that they can do that, but it might take them a while to get in. If my teen wants this, what's available? Is it a peer mentor? Is it small groups? Is it like some have like a clinic of sorts that you can come if you're feeling this way and they kind of triage together? So what are all of the different offerings? Because what you need to know is it's pretty consistent now, the demand. It used to be like high before finals, and now it is pretty consistent. If referred out to community, is it covered by university healthcare? Not all the time. How does that work? I guess it would probably depend on the type of insurance that you have, because not all students use the insurance that's provided that you need to pay for via the school. Those are kind of the main pieces, the faculty staff training. What does it look like in order for the triage to take place? I'm not going to get into and hear the crisis part of it with what happens if your teen was in crisis and like suicide, all of that kind of piece. It really does vary per college. And because I feel like that's sort of outside of my area of expertise, not being a mental health counselor, that's not something that I wanted to cover today. But those are questions that you can freely ask. You can ask the university healthcare systems. You can ask the counseling and psychological services, the disability services. Do not be afraid to ask questions. And most importantly, encourage your teen to not be afraid to ask the questions. Do it together. Make the calls together. Help them understand what it might sound like. What might they ask? We want them to be able to advocate for themselves. The final sort of note here for you is that finding fit is about looking at a wide variety of factors that cross different categories: academic fit, social fit, personal, emotional fit, social. All of these different pieces are really important, and there's lots of things to think about across all the factors. We say a lot that mental health matters above all else, right? I would hope that you would want a healthy child in college more than a child that's achieving, doing, going, getting good grades. I would hope that that's what you want. If you really believe that, it means that thinking about your teen's mental health is the most important thing you can think of when you're looking at the fit of a college. And so the first thing, like I said at the beginning, is to get really, really clear on what your teen needs, to look at how they thrive now, and to replicate some of those pieces as much as you possibly can on that college campus. I'm a believer that students should have a mix of being in their comfort zone and out of it. There's some that cannot handle being out of their comfort zone, and that's okay. But we want to make sure that there's a lot of that comfort zone there in the fit. Mental health above all else. Mental health above all else. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.